If you knew what I've carried in my chest for over 40 years, maybe you wouldn't believe that a person could survive so much pain. But I survived, and today I'm going to tell everything. My name is Mary Ellen. I'm 68 years old, and I've lived in Nashville since I was born. I'm a grandma like any other you see on the street. White hair, prescription glasses, floral dress. But behind this wrinkled face, there's a story that few people know. A story I kept for decades, and that today, finally, I have the courage to share with you who are watching me from the other side of this little screen. Before I start, I want to ask you something special. Subscribe here to the channel. Give the video a like, because this helps us so much to continue bringing these real stories of American women who went through things no one should go through. And tell me in the comments where you're watching this video from. Is it from New York, Texas, the Midwest, another country? I get so curious to know where my story will reach. And since we're talking about family, also tell me how many sons or daughters you have. I know it seems like a silly question, but it'll make sense when I finish telling my story. Go on, comment below, don't be shy. How many children did God give you? 1, 2, 5? Or don't you have any yet? I read all the comments, okay? Each one of them. Well, let me start from the very beginning. I was born in 1956 in a small house in East Nashville. I never knew my father. My mother, Constance, always changed the subject when I asked about him. She'd just say he left before I was born, and it wasn't worth talking about a man who abandons a pregnant woman. Over time, I stopped asking. Who raised us was my grandfather, my mother's father. Mr. Anthony was a hard man, the kind we were afraid to even look at. He worked as a construction worker and was the only one who brought money into the house. That's why his word was law. Nobody contradicted Mr. Anthony. Not my mother, not my grandmother who died when I was about 8 years old, not me. The house was like this. In the front room, my grandfather slept alone. In the middle room, my mother and I shared a single bed. And there was a little room in the back that served as storage, full of my grandfather's tools and old stuff. My childhood wasn't the worst, despite everything. I studied up to 4th grade in a public school near home. My grandfather didn't let me continue because he said women didn't need much education. They had to learn how to take care of the house. My mother tried to argue, but she got a slap in the face that I still remember the sound of. She never touched the subject again. At 14, I already knew how to do everything in the house. Cook, wash, iron, sew. My grandfather said I was becoming accomplished, that soon I could marry and leave that house. That's what I wanted most in the world, to get out of there. Not that he beat me much, no. But he had a way of looking, a way of speaking that made us feel small, worthless. It was at a St. John's festival. I had just turned 16 when I met Joe Carter. He was a salesman at a fabric store downtown, 23 years old, and had a smile that lit up the whole street. We danced all night, and at the end of the party, he asked to see me again. My heart raced. It was the first time someone showed interest in me. We dated in secret for a few months. My grandfather couldn't even dream of it. My mother knew, but pretended she didn't see anything. She understood my desperation to get out of that house. When Joe asked for my hand in marriage, it was chaos. My grandfather didn't even want to hear about it. He said I was too young, that Joe was broke, that he was a nobody. But this time my mother found courage. I think she saw in me the chance she never had. She confronted her father and said I was going to marry, yes, that I was old enough, that the young man was hardworking and honest. She got some yelling, some humiliation, but didn't back down. To this day, I thank God for the courage she had that day. I got married on March 3rd, 1973, on a sunny Saturday. It was a simple wedding, just civil ceremony. There was no party because my grandfather refused to help with anything. But I was so happy I didn't even care. I was finally leaving that house, having my own life, my own family. Joe had rented a little 2-room house in the Berry Hill neighborhood. It was small, the bathroom was outside, but it was ours. Just ours. In the first months of marriage, I felt like I was in paradise. I could wake up whenever I wanted, cook whatever I wanted, talk without fear of being scolded. Joe was affectionate, treated me like a queen. We didn't have much, but we had peace, and that was worth more than any money. But life has these things, right? When we think everything's fine, a storm comes. After about 6 months of marriage, I started feeling sick. Morning sickness, dizziness, too much sleep. My mother came to visit and said right away, "You're pregnant, girl." I went to the health clinic and confirmed it. I was expecting a baby. You can't imagine the happiness I felt. I always dreamed of being a mother since I was little. I played with dolls until I was 13, imagining what it would be like to have a real child. And now that dream was going to come true. Joe was over the moon when I told him. He picked me up, spun me around the whole house. We started making plans. He was going to ask for a raise at work. We were going to save money to buy a crib, baby clothes, everything the baby would need. We decided if it was a boy, it would be called Joe Carter Jr., and if it was a girl, Anna Marie, which was his mother's name, who had already passed away. The problem started when my grandfather found out about the pregnancy. My mother let it slip accidentally in a conversation. He was furious. He showed up at my house on a Sunday morning, banging on the door like crazy. When I opened it, he pushed everything in. "What are you thinking? That you're going to have baby after baby for me to support?" I didn't understand at first. Support how, if I didn't live with him anymore? But then he explained, spitting the words in my face. He said Joe didn't earn enough to even maintain a house, let alone a child. That when things got tight, and they would get tight, we'd have to go back to his house. And he wasn't willing to support more people. "I already raised you and your mother on my back. I'm not going to raise grandchildren too." I tried to argue that we were managing well, that Joe would get a raise, that we'd figure it out. But he didn't want to hear it. He left slamming the door and yelling that I'd see, that children cost money, that we'd end up on the street. I spent the rest of the day crying. Joe tried to calm me down, said my grandfather was exaggerating, that we'd be able to raise our child with dignity. But deep down, a little seed of fear started growing inside me. What if my grandfather was right? What if we really couldn't make it? The months passed and my belly grew. In the 5th month, we found out it was a girl, Anna Marie, as we had agreed. Joe got some overtime at work and we started saving a little money. We bought a used crib, but in good condition. My mother sewed some little clothes. It seemed like everything would work out. My grandfather disappeared for a few months. He didn't show up, didn't send messages. I thought he had finally accepted the situation. But I should have known that when a snake is quiet, it's preparing to strike. In the 8th month of pregnancy, I was huge. I had trouble doing everything, walking, sleeping. Joe left early for work and came back late. I stayed alone all day, just with my belly and my thoughts. It was on one of those afternoons that my grandfather appeared again. I was lying on the couch, resting my swollen legs, when I heard the knock on the door. I thought it was my mother coming to visit. I got up with difficulty and went to open it. It was him. "I need to talk to you." His manner was different. He wasn't yelling or cursing. He was too calm. That gave me chills down my spine, but I let him in. He sat in the kitchen chair and kept looking at me with those little eyes. "There's still time to fix this." "Fix what, Grandpa?" "This situation. There are women who do these things. Take out babies before they're born. I know a midwife who—" I jumped up, even with the big belly. "Are you crazy? My daughter will be born, yes, and you have nothing to do with it." That's when he changed. His face turned red. The veins in his neck popped out. He got up from the chair and came at me. "You ungrateful girl! Don't come crying asking for help later." He left, slamming the door again. I was shaking, scared, but also angry. How could he suggest such a thing? My daughter, my Anna Marie, would be born and be very loved, even if I had to work day and night to support her. The following days were tense. My grandfather didn't show up anymore, but I lived in fear. Fear of what he could do, fear of what could happen. I told Joe about the visit, and he was furious. He wanted to go confront him, but I wouldn't let him. I knew my grandfather. When contradicted, he was capable of anything. And it was on a Thursday morning, Joe had left for work as usual, when the tragedy that changed my life forever happened. But that part I'll tell in the next chapter, because it still hurts too much to remember. It still bleeds inside. For now, just know that my dream of being a mother, of holding my Anna Marie in my arms, of forming the family I always wanted. That dream died that day. But how it died and what happened after, that you'll have to wait to find out. I remember that day like it was yesterday. Thursday, September 15th, 1973, 8.5 months pregnant. I woke up with a strange pain in my back, different from the normal pregnancy pains. Joe had already left for work. It was about 6:30 in the morning. I got up slowly, my belly weighing me down. Anna Marie was moving a lot that morning, more than normal. She seemed restless. I went to the kitchen to make some herbal tea to see if it would calm things down. That's when I heard the knock on the door. My heart raced. A knock early in the morning was never a good thing. I looked through the crack in the window. It was him, my grandfather, alone, with a face I'd never seen before. "Open this door, Mary Ellen." His voice was strange. It wasn't a shout, but there was something there that made me freeze. I opened the door slowly, already feeling that something very bad was going to happen. He came in without asking permission, looked around to make sure everything was empty. Then he stared at me. Red eyes, smell of alcohol, even though it was morning. "Today this ends." "What ends, Grandpa?" "I don't understand. This baby nonsense. I already warned you I'm not going to support anyone else. You didn't want to listen nicely." Before I could react, he pushed me. I fell sitting on the couch, my belly hurting from the impact. I tried to get up, but he held me by the shoulders. "Grandpa, please, don't do this. It's your great-granddaughter." "Great-granddaughter, my ass. It's another mouth to feed." What happened next? Oh my God, it's hard even today to put into words. He grabbed the broom that was behind the door. I tried to protect my belly with my hands, tried to run, but 8 months of pregnancy doesn't make you agile. The first blow was on my back, the second on my legs. I screamed, begged, but he was like an animal, glazed eyes, heavy breathing. I fell on the floor, curled up trying to protect my girl. "Please, Grandpa." "No, my daughter." He didn't stop. He hit with the broom wherever he could reach. On my back, arms, legs. I felt each blow like a knife, but the physical pain was nothing compared to the fear for my Anna Marie. In a moment of desperation, I managed to crawl to the kitchen. There was a knife on top of the sink. Not to attack him, but to defend myself. When he saw it, he got even more furious. He yanked the knife from my hand and threw it away. "Now you're going to learn to respect me." That's when he did the unthinkable. He pulled me by the hair, dragged me back to the living room. I felt something warm running down my legs. Blood. My God, it was blood. "Grandpa, I'm bleeding. The baby." But it was like he didn't hear, or worse, like that was exactly what he wanted. I won't go into details of what came next. There are things that even after 40 years I can't speak. But he forced me, right there, on the floor of my house, 8 months pregnant, bleeding. "Now you're going to lose this child." When it was finally over, he got up, straightened his clothes like nothing had happened. He left me there, curled up on the floor, crying, bleeding, feeling pains that seemed to tear my body from the inside. "If you tell anyone, I'll come back and finish the job." He left and closed the door. I stayed there, I don't know how long. Minutes? Hours? The pain was so much I couldn't even think straight. The blood wouldn't stop. The contractions started strong, different from everything the midwives had explained to me. I managed to drag myself to the door. A neighbor, Mrs. Carmen, was sweeping the sidewalk. When she saw me, she dropped the broom and ran. "My God, Mary Ellen. What happened?" "The baby." "Hospital." She yelled for her son, a boy about 15 years old, to get a cart. Anything that would work to take me. They covered me with a sheet and put me in Mr. Manuel's cart, who sold vegetables. The road to the hospital seemed eternal. Every bump in the road was a new wave of pain. We arrived at Nashville General Hospital. It was almost noon. The nurses carried me straight to the delivery room. The doctor, Dr. Arnold, an elderly man with white hair, examined me and shook his head. "Placental abruption, severe hemorrhage. Prepare the operating room." Everything got confused after that. I remember bright lights, people running, someone putting a mask on my face, the sweet smell of ether. Then, darkness. I woke up. I don't know how many hours later. The first thing I noticed was the silence. Maternity hospitals are noisy, full of babies crying, but there it was all quiet. Too quiet. My daughter. Where's my daughter? A nurse approached. Her face already said everything, but I needed to hear it. I'm sorry, ma'am. The baby didn't make it. The trauma was too great. The world collapsed. It wasn't possible. Anna Marie, my girl, who I felt moving in my belly for months, who I already loved more than anything, dead. Because of him. Because of that monster. I want to see her. Ma'am, it's not advisable. I want to see my daughter. They brought her wrapped in a little white cloth. So small, so perfect. Little eyes closed, little mouth half open. It looked like she was sleeping. I held her in my arms, her cold little body against my chest. Forgive me, my daughter. Forgive me for not being able to protect you. I cried until I had no more tears. I kissed each of her little fingers, memorized every feature of her little face. My Anna Marie, my dream that died before it was even born. The doctor came to talk to me later. He said that besides the placental abruption, there was evidence of severe trauma, internal hemorrhage, injuries that indicated physical and sexual violence. He asked if I wanted to file a police report. But how? How to report my own grandfather, the man who supported my mother? What if he carried out the threat and came back to finish the job? Or worse, if he did something to my mother? I fell down the stairs, I lied. I was alone at home and fell. The doctor looked at me like someone who doesn't believe, but he didn't insist. Back then, it was like that. Domestic violence stayed at home. Nobody interfered. Joe arrived at the hospital in the late afternoon. Someone from the neighborhood had gone to tell him at work. When he entered the room and saw me there, pale, without a belly, without a baby, he understood everything. He threw himself on top of me, crying, "My God, Mary, our little girl!" I told the same lie, fell down the stairs, but a husband knows his wife. He saw in my eyes that there was something more, but he also didn't insist. Not at that moment. We buried Anna Marie 2 days later, a little white coffin in Elmwood Cemetery. Few people came. My mother appeared, but stayed far away. My grandfather didn't even show up. Joe had to hold me so I wouldn't fall when they lowered the coffin. I came home empty inside. The room we had prepared for the baby became a ghost. The crib, the little clothes, everything there, reminding me of what I had lost, of what he had taken from me. The following weeks were a blur. I didn't eat, didn't sleep, didn't talk. I stayed all day lying down, looking at the ceiling. Joe tried to cheer me up. But how? How to overcome something like this? It was on a Sunday, 3 weeks after the burial, that everything changed. Joe had gone out to buy bread. I was alone, wrapped in a blanket, when he arrived without warning. My grandfather. He came in like he owned the house. He sat in the same chair as always. He looked at me with that face of someone who didn't do anything. "It's over. Now go back to living normally, and next time, obey me." It was the last straw. Something broke inside me at that moment. It wasn't fear anymore. It was hate. Pure, visceral hate that burned inside. "Get out of my house." "What?" "Get out of my house before I do something terrible." He laughed. "You don't have the courage for anything. You're weak like your mother." I got up. I grabbed the first thing I saw in front of me, a glass ashtray. "Get out, or I'll kill you right here." He must have seen something in my eyes because he got up and left. But before leaving, he still said, "This won't stay like this." When Joe came back, he found me sitting on the floor, shaking, the ashtray still in my hand. That's when I told him everything, every detail, every horror. I saw his face changing as I spoke, from surprise to horror, from horror to fury. "I'm going to kill him." "No, Joe, I don't want you in jail." "So what do we do? Leave it like this?" That's when the idea started to be born. I don't know if it was his or mine, maybe both of us together. But that afternoon, there on the floor of our kitchen, we started planning something that would change our lives forever. Revenge. Not just any revenge. one that would make him feel firsthand what he made me go through. I know some guys, Joe said after thinking a lot. Heavy people, who do any job for money. Do we have money? We'll figure it out, sell whatever we need to, borrow, but this won't stay like this. And that's how it started. The plan that would transform victims into perpetrators. That would show my grandfather that every action has a reaction, that justice doesn't always come through legal means. But how we executed that plan, who were these people Joe knew, and what happened next? That's a subject for the next chapter. Because this story is still far from over. The first thing was the hardest, finding the courage to get out of bed. For weeks after I buried my Anna Marie, I lived within 4 walls, with no will for anything. But that visit from my grandfather, that mocking face, changed everything. The sadness turned into rage, and the rage became fuel. Joe started going out at night, after work. He'd come back late, always quiet. When I asked where he'd been, he'd just say, taking care of some things. I knew he was looking for the right people for our plan. It took almost a month until he came home with news. It was a Friday, early November. He came in, closed the door carefully, and sat next to me. I found them. Found who? The guys. But it won't be cheap. He explained that he had met some men through a work colleague, people who did dirty jobs for merchants, collected debts, solved problems. The leader was called Tony Bighead. Strange name, but Joe said it was better not to ask why. How much do they want? $3,000. It was a fortune. Joe earned $300 a month. I stayed quiet, doing the math. We had some savings, but it wasn't even close to that. I'll sell my jewelry, I said suddenly. The gold necklace my godmother gave me, the wedding earrings. No, Mary, they're your memories. What memory is worth more than justice for our daughter? The next day, we went downtown. We sold everything that had any value. My jewelry, Joe's wristwatch that his father had given him, even the living room radio. We got $1,500. Half was missing. That's when Joe had the idea of asking for a loan from Mr. Murray, owner of the store where he worked. He made up that it was for my surgery, complication from childbirth. Mr. Murray was a good man. He lent it without asking too many questions. With the money in hand, we scheduled the meeting. It was in a dirty bar in South Nashville, the kind the police don't even go near. Tony Bighead was a big man, black, scar cutting through his left eyebrow. He had 2 more with him, Skinny Bill and Blackjack. So you want a special little job, Tony said, taking a shot of whiskey. Joe explained everything. Who my grandfather was, where he lived, his schedules, but he didn't tell the reason. He just said it was a family score to settle. What kind of score? The same one he did to my wife. Only worse. Tony looked at me for the first time. He must have seen something on my face because he didn't ask any more questions about the reason. How long? A week. I want him out of circulation for a week. And then? Then let him go, but let him come back knowing it was our doing. Tony scratched his chin. $3,500 and $500 more for expenses. The deal was $3,000. The deal was a little job. This is a special job. A week is work. You have to arrange a place, food, everything. We didn't have the extra $500, but I took off my wedding ring, the only jewelry I hadn't sold. I put it on the table. It's worth about $600. Keep the change. Joe looked at me surprised. The wedding ring was sacred to me. But nothing was more sacred than avenging my daughter. Tony took the ring, examined it, put it in his pocket. Deal done. When? Next Thursday. He leaves home at 5 in the morning to go to work. Get him at the corner of Elm Street and Madison Avenue. How do I recognize him? I described my grandfather. Short, thin, sparse gray hair, thin mustache, limp in his left leg from an old accident. Any other characteristic? He wears a St. Christopher chain around his neck. Never takes it off. Tony wrote everything down on bread paper. Thursday, 5 in the morning. In a week you'll get news. We left the bar with shaky legs. It was done. There was no going back. On the way home, Joe held my hand. Are you sure about this? He killed our daughter. He deserves much more than a week of hell. The following days were pure anxiety. I couldn't sleep right, imagining what it would be like, what they would do to him, if they would keep the deal, if the police would find out. Thursday arrived. We woke up at 4, but neither of us had really slept. We stayed at the window, watching the still, dark street. At 5 o'clock sharp we saw shadows moving at the corner. Then nothing. Silence. That day, my grandfather didn't show up for work. His boss sent word home. My mother was desperate. She thought there had been some accident. She went to the police, to the hospital. Nothing. He had disappeared. 2 days later, on Saturday, she showed up at my house, crying, desperate. "Mary Ellen, your grandfather has disappeared. Nobody knows about him since Thursday." I pretended surprise. "What do you mean, disappeared?" "He left for work and didn't get there. I've looked everywhere. Could he have been robbed? Could he be dead in a ditch?" I consoled her as I could, but inside I felt a bitter satisfaction. Let her suffer. Let her feel a little of the pain he caused me. The days passed. 5 days. 6. On the 7th, when I thought Tony wasn't going to keep the deal to release him, they knocked on the door. It was my mother again, but this time different. She wasn't crying. She had a strange face. "They found your grandfather." "Where? Is he okay?" "He's at home. But changed." "Changed how?" She shook her head. "He doesn't want to say what happened. He doesn't want to see anyone. He stays locked in his room all day." I went to visit the next day. I needed to see with my own eyes. When I entered the house, my mother whispered, "He's different, Mary. Be careful." I knocked on the bedroom door. "Grandpa, it's me, Mary Ellen." Silence. Then a weak voice. "Come in." When I opened the door, I almost didn't recognize him. He was curled up in bed, thinner, his face marked. But it wasn't the physical marks that caught attention. It was the look. That hard, cruel look had disappeared. In its place, I saw fear, pure terror. "What happened to you?" He looked at me like he was seeing a ghost. He opened his mouth, closed it, started shaking. "Was it you?" "Me what, Grandpa?" "You who sent those men?" I played dumb. "What men? What are you talking about?" He started crying. My grandfather, the man I'd never seen, shed a tear, crying like a child. "Forgive me. I didn't mean to. The girl. It was the devil that got into me." It was the first time he mentioned Anna Marie, the first time he showed any remorse. But it was too late. "I don't know what you're talking about. They said it was for the girl, that I was going to pay for what I did. They made me. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. I knew Tony had kept the deal. An eye for an eye. A tooth for a tooth. If you did something wrong, maybe it's God's punishment." I left the room, leaving him in tears. We never exchanged another word. He lived a few more years, but like a shadow. He didn't leave the house, didn't talk to anyone. The authoritarian man became a scared mouse. Joe and I never touched the subject again. It was our secret, our pact. Sometimes he looked at me as if asking if it was worth it, and I always answered with my eyes. It was, but life went on. The pain of losing Anna Marie never went away, but I learned to live with it. We tried to have other children, but my body was too damaged. The doctors said the trauma from childbirth caused irreversible damage. That's when something changed in me. If I couldn't be a mother, I would help other mothers. I started studying on my own, reading everything about psychology, trauma, grief. I discovered there was a world of women like me, suffering in silence. Years later, when the doors finally opened for women to study more, I went back to school. I finished middle school, then high school. At 35, I passed the entrance exam for psychology. Joe supported me in everything. He said it was the least after everything I'd been through. I graduated at 40. I opened a small office specializing in mothers. Mothers who lost children, mothers who suffered violence, mothers who carried traumas that no one else understood. Each woman I helped was like saving a piece of myself. Each story I heard reminded me that I wasn't alone. That pain, as great as it is, can become strength to help others. Today, at 68, I look back and see a crooked road, full of holes, but that brought me here. I don't regret anything, not even the revenge. Justice doesn't always come the way we expect. Sometimes we have to make our own justice. My grandfather died in 1982, alone in the room where he lived his last years as a prisoner of his own fear. I went to the funeral. Not for him, but for my mother. I threw a handful of dirt in the grave and whispered, "Now it's paid." Anna Marie would be 50 today. Sometimes I imagine what she would be like. Married? With children? Would she have my eyes or her father's? I visit her grave every year on the day she was born dead. I bring white flowers, talk to her. I tell her about the women I help, the lives I touch. I know she understands. I know she forgives. This is my story, a story of pain that became purpose, of loss that became struggle. If you've come this far, thank you for listening. Thank you for not judging. And if you've been through something similar, know. The pain doesn't go away, but we learn to carry it. And sometimes, just sometimes, we manage to transform it into something bigger. Time flew by after all that. It was 1974 and life needed to go on. Joe went back to work normally. I tried to maintain the house, but there was an emptiness that nothing filled. That's when Constance, my neighbor, told me about a typing course they were giving at the community center. Mary Ellen, stop dwelling on the past. Go learn something new. She was right. I enrolled. 3 months hitting those hard keys. My fingers hurt, but my mind stopped thinking about disgrace. I got my certificate and got a job in an accounting office. It didn't pay much, but it gave me something to do. It was there that I met Mrs. Evelyn, strong woman in her 50s who ran the office with an iron fist. One day, she saw me crying in the bathroom. It was September 15th, 1 year since Anna Marie's death. What's wrong, girl? Nothing, Mrs. Evelyn. Just some memories. She sat next to me on the bathroom floor. Lost a child? I nodded. Me too. 3. One after another. Repeated miscarriage, the doctor said. We stayed there, 2 broken women, sharing a pain that only those who've been through it understand. From that day on, Evelyn became more than a boss. She became a friend, counselor, almost a mother. You know what saved me? She said one day. Helping others. There's a group at the Catholic Church. Women who lost babies. We meet, talk, cry together. I went to the first meeting scared to death. It was in a hall behind St. Patrick's Church. About 15 women sitting in a circle. Each one told her story. Some lost in childbirth, some had spontaneous miscarriage, some saw their child die from disease. When it was my turn, I froze. How to tell, how to explain without revealing the whole truth. I lost my girl at 8 months, complication in childbirth. It was half truth, but it was what I could say. The women hugged me, cried with me. I didn't need to explain anything else. The pain was universal. I started going every week. I discovered that listening relieved as much as talking. Each story was a mirror of mine. Each shared tear lessened the weight. It was at one of these meetings that I met Sister Teresa, young nun, about 30 years old, who coordinated the group. She noticed I had a knack for counseling the others. Mary Ellen, you have a gift. Have you ever thought about studying to really help people? Study what, sister? I barely have elementary education. That can be fixed. There's adult education, technical courses. What's important is the will. The idea kept hammering in my head. Me helping other women, making my pain something useful. I talked to Joe that night. If that's what will make you happy, I support you. My marathon began. I worked during the day, studied at night. Adult education for middle school. 2 years grinding, but I got the diploma. Then came high school, 3 more years. I was already 32 when I finished. The dream of going to college seemed impossible. It was expensive, difficult, and I wasn't young anymore. But Evelyn, who became almost a godmother, insisted. Take the entrance exam, girl. What if you pass? I studied like crazy. Math was my terror, but Joe helped me. Biology, English, history, everything entering my head little by little. I took the entrance exam for psychology at State University. It was a shot in the dark. The result day was agony. Joe went with me to see the list. I looked for my name once, twice, 3 times. Nothing. I was already turning away when he shouted, "Mary, it's here. You passed." I cried like a child. Me, Mary Ellen, daughter of a washerwoman, granddaughter of a violent construction worker, was going to be a doctor. It seemed like a lie. College was another challenge. I was the oldest in the class. The kids called me Aunt, but I didn't care. I was there with a greater purpose. Every developmental psychology class, trauma, grief, I thought of Anna Marie, of all the Anna Maries who needed help. In the third year, I did an internship at a community clinic. That's when I attended my first official patient, Mrs. Marlene. She had lost her son in an accident. She couldn't get over it. "Doctor, you don't know what it's like to lose a child." "I do, Mrs. Marlene. More than you imagine." I told my story, the official version, about the complicated birth. She cried, I cried. But something beautiful came out of it, a connection, an understanding that books didn't teach. I graduated in 1985, 41 years old, diploma in hand, tears in my eyes. Joe was there, proud. My mother too, already elderly. My grandfather had died 3 years earlier, taking to the grave the secrets of what really happened. I opened an office in a small 2-story building downtown. Nothing fancy. But it was mine. I put up a discreet sign. Psychologist Mary Ellen, specialized in maternal grief. Patients started to appear. Broken women, like I was, each with her story, her pain, her emptiness. I created my own method, mixing what I learned in books with what life taught me. There was Rosangela, who lost premature twins. Claudia, whose baby was born with malformation. Joan, who suffered 5 miscarriages in a row. Each case was unique, but the pain was similar. "How did you overcome it, doctor?" It was the question they always asked. I answered carefully. Overcoming wasn't forgetting. It was learning to live with absence, transforming pain into something productive. I created support groups in the office. Wednesday nights, women gathered to share the burden. Some came once and disappeared. Others became family. I saw women reborn there, like I was reborn. In 1990, I received an invitation to speak at a psychology congress in Atlanta. The theme was maternal grief and resignification. I shook at the base. Me, lecturing to doctors graduated from the best universities? Joe encouraged me. Go there and show that experience is worth more than a fancy diploma. The lecture was a success. I spoke from the heart without academic frills. I told cases, without names, of course, showed that behind each theory there was a real woman suffering. After that, invitations multiplied. Hospitals wanted my workshop. Universities asked me to teach classes. I became a reference in maternal grief. Who would have thought? In 1995, I published my first book, When the Cradle Stays Empty, bestseller in the category. Women from all over America wrote thanking me, telling their stories, asking for help. That's when I decided to expand. I trained other psychologists in my method. I opened branches in other cities, not for money, but to reach more women. Each trained professional was a multiplier of hope. Joe supported me in everything. He traveled with me to congresses, held my hand in difficult moments. Our marriage strengthened in adversity. We didn't have other biological children, but how many women didn't I call daughter of the heart? In 2000, I received the title of Doctor Honoris Causa from State University. Me, who barely had elementary school, being called a real doctor. At the ceremony, I dedicated the title to Anna Marie. My daughter lived only a few hours, but her legacy saved thousands of lives. It was true. Every woman I helped, every mother who found peace, was a tribute to her. My girl who wasn't born became an angel to so many others. Today, at 68, I look at my office full of diplomas, photos with patients, thank you letters. It's not the future I imagined at 16, pregnant and full of dreams. It's better. Much better. The pain hasn't gone away. It never goes away completely, but it became a work tool, healing instrument. What was a curse became a blessing. Every now and then, I visit Anna Marie's grave. I bring flowers, talk to her. I tell her about the women I helped, the lives I changed. I know she hears. I know she understands. I know she forgives. My grandfather died without ever talking about what those men did to him. He took the trauma to the grave, like I almost took mine. The difference is that he died a prisoner of fear. I lived to transform fear into strength. If someone asks me if it was worth it, I answer without hesitation. Every tear, every sleepless night, every moment of despair was worth it. Because from where death came, life was born. From where pain came, healing was born. This is my real story of Mary Ellen, the girl who lost everything and gained a purpose. If you've come this far, thank you very much. And if you know someone going through maternal grief, seek help. Don't suffer alone. Shared pain is diminished pain. May the Virgin Mary console all mothers who cry for their little angels, and may Anna Marie, my guiding star, continue illuminating my path. My career as a psychologist specializing in maternal grief took off in a way I never imagined. It was 2001 when I received an invitation that would change everything. The Department of Health wanted to implement a national program supporting bereaved mothers based on my method. Dr. Mary Ellen, we need you to train professionals in all states. I accepted immediately. It was the chance to bring hope to every corner of America. I assembled a team, prepared materials, and we started traveling the country. From Alaska to Florida, training psychologists, nurses, social workers. In each city, the stories repeated and multiplied. Women suffering alone, without support, without understanding. Many like me, victims of violence that resulted in loss. But back then, just like in my youth, these cases were hushed up. It was on one of these trips in Portland, Oregon, that I met Constance. Young, 22 years old, had lost her baby after being beaten by her drunk husband. The story was so similar to mine that I had to leave the room to breathe. He said he didn't want another mouth to feed, she told between sobs. I worked with Constance for weeks. I saw in her the girl I was. But this time, I had tools to help. Knowledge, experience, resources. We got legal support, safe shelter, complete psychological treatment. Seeing Constance rebuild herself was like watching my own rebirth. She not only overcame the trauma, but decided to study psychology too. Today, she's one of my most dedicated collaborators. In 2005, I created the Anna Marie Foundation, name of my daughter who didn't live, but whose death gave meaning to the lives of so many others. The foundation offered comprehensive support, psychological, legal, social, everything I didn't have. Joe was fundamental in all this. Already retired, he became treasurer of the foundation. He took care of the finances with the same care he took care of me all these years. Sometimes I caught him looking at Anna Marie's photo that we kept at headquarters. She would be a psychologist too, he'd say. I'm sure. The foundation grew. We got corporate support, government funding, international donations. In 5 years, we had headquarters in 10 capitals. Each headquarters was a beacon of hope for desperate women. But the work took its toll. In 2010, Joe had a heart attack. He survived, but was weakened. I had to slow down, take care of him like he took care of me. That's when I realized it was time to prepare successors. I chose 5 women. All had gone through the pain of loss. All had rebuilt themselves with help from the foundation. Marcia, Solange, Patricia, Luciana, and Amanda, my daughters of the heart, as I started calling them. For 2 years, I trained them personally. Not just in therapeutic techniques, but in the compassion necessary for the work. Each one took over a regional foundation, expanding our reach even more. In 2015, I lost Joe. Fatal heart attack this time. He died sleeping, without suffering. At the wake, hundreds of women appeared. All wanted to thank the man who made my work possible. Without his support, you wouldn't have saved my life, said one of them. It was true. Joe was my safe harbor, my accomplice in the secret we carried together, the only one who knew the complete truth about Anna Marie's death and the revenge against my grandfather. After he left, I thought about stopping. At 71, I had already done my part, but the girls, my successors, wouldn't let me. You're our inspiration. You can't stop now. I continued, but differently. Less travel, more supervision. I wrote 3 more books, all bestsellers. I participated in documentaries, gave interviews. The cause of maternal grief gained national visibility. In 2018, I was invited to speak at the UN. Me, Mary Ellen, simple woman from Nashville, speaking in New York about maternal mental health. If my mother were alive, she wouldn't believe it. The speech was emotional. I talked about the alarming numbers of women suffering in silence, about the need for public policies, about how to transform pain into purpose. I received a standing ovation, But the most striking moment was when a lady approached after the lecture. She was Italian, about 80 years old. She hugged me crying. I lost my bambina 60 years ago. I never got over it. Today, hearing you, I felt peace for the first time. In that hug, the circle closed. The girl who lost her daughter became a woman who heals the pain of other mothers. No matter the nationality, language, culture, a mother's pain is universal. I returned to America renewed. At 75, I decided it was time to tell my complete story. No longer the official version of complicated childbirth, but the truth, all of it. I called my 5 successors for a private meeting. I locked the conference room door, took a deep breath, and told them about my grandfather, about what he did, about the revenge, everything. The silence was deafening. Then, one by one, they hugged me. There was no judgment, just understanding, and more. 2 of them revealed similar stories. Family violence that resulted in loss. Secrets kept for decades. "That's why you understand us so well," said Marcia. "Because you lived through the worst." We decided to create a special protocol at the foundation for cases of violence. Something deeper, more confidential. How many women wouldn't be suffering like I suffered, unable to tell the truth? Today, at 68, I see the legacy I built. There are 50 Anna Marie Foundation headquarters across America. More than 100,000 women served. Thousands of professionals trained. Laws changed, policies implemented. But what makes me most proud are the individual stories, like Teresa, who after losing 3 babies in a row managed to adopt twins, or Francisca, who transformed her pain into art, becoming a renowned sculptor, or so many others who found peace, purpose, new life. I still visit Anna Marie's grave monthly. Now I bring not only flowers, but photos of the women I helped, of the rainbow babies born after grief, of rebuilt families. It's my way of showing her that her death wasn't in vain. Sometimes I think about my grandfather, not with hate, not anymore. With pity, perhaps. He died a prisoner of his own evil. He never knew true love, never felt the joy of seeing a life prosper. What a waste. The revenge? I don't regret it. At the time, it was what I could do with the pain. Today, I would have other resources, therapy, legal justice, support. But each era has its limitations. I did what I could with what I had. If I could go back in time, would I change anything? Yes. I would have sought help sooner. I would have reported it officially. I would have better protected my daughter. But the past doesn't come back. We can only learn from it. My greatest pride? Having broken the cycle. The violence I suffered didn't generate more violence. It generated healing. My daughter's death didn't generate more death. It generated life. Thousands of lives saved, transformed, renewed. This is my legacy. This is my victory. Not over my grandfather, but over destiny. Over tragedy. Over pain. I transformed curse into blessing. I made the sweetest lemonade from lemons. If you've come this far in my story, thank you very much. It was long, I know. Hard to hear, but necessary. Because how many Mary Ellens aren't out there, suffering in silence? If you're one of them, seek help. Don't carry the weight of the world alone. And if you know someone going through this, extend your hand. Sometimes a small gesture saves a life. Now let me ask something important. If this story touched your heart, subscribe here to Grandparents' Tales. Every week, there's a new story, real story, of American women who overcame the impossible. Give the video a like too. This helps other people find these stories. And comment below how many children you have. Or if you don't have any, if you want to have them. I love reading about your families. My story ends here, but yours continues. Make it something beautiful. Transform pain into purpose, tragedy into overcoming. It's possible. I'm living proof of that. May God bless each one of you. May the Virgin Mary console afflicted hearts. And may all the Anna Maries in heaven take care of their mothers here on earth. Thank you for listening to me. Thank you for not judging. Thank you for existing. With love, Grandma Mary Ellen.